February 1959. The Ural Mountains of Russia are covered in deep snow, stretching endlessly under a gray winter sky. The cold bites at every exposed surface, and the wind whispers through the jagged peaks. 9 hikers, a small but experienced team, prepare for a winter trek that many would call challenging, even dangerous. They are young, brave, and full of energy. Each carries hopes, dreams, and the thrill of adventure. Among them are men and women from different towns, friends and classmates, united by a love for the mountains and the snow. Before leaving the safety of the town, they carefully check their equipment: heavy coats, sturdy boots, skis, snowshoes, backpacks filled with food and supplies, tents, and ropes. Maps are spread out, showing trails and peaks, but discussions are long and meticulous. Each hiker understands the risks, yet their excitement outweighs any fear. As they step onto the snow-covered paths leading into the wilderness, the crunch of their boots echoes across the frozen landscape. The first gusts of icy wind sweep across the slopes. The mountains are majestic and beautiful, but they carry a silent warning of the harsh conditions ahead. The hikers talk among themselves, laughter mingling with the cold air, unaware of the danger that waits. Hours pass as they move deeper into the remote region. Clouds gather overhead and snow begins to fall lightly, dusting their coats and backpacks. Their breaths form small clouds in the frigid air. Every hiker remains alert, scanning the terrain, navigating around crevices, frozen streams, and uneven slopes. Yet, there is a calm confidence among them. Experience and preparation give them courage. This is the beginning of the Dyatlov Pass expedition, a journey that starts with optimism and excitement, but will soon descend into mystery and fear. What seems like a simple winter trek is about to become one of the most chilling and unsolved stories in history. The hikers press on, leaving the last signs of civilization behind. The town fades into the distance, replaced by endless white slopes and towering pine forests. The cold grows sharper, biting through their clothing, and the wind howls around the peaks. Despite the harsh conditions, the group maintains a steady pace. They are well trained, accustomed to winter trekking, and confident in their abilities. Conversation flows occasionally, discussing the route, sharing snacks, and joking to lift spirits, yet an unspoken tension lingers. Nature is beautiful, but unpredictable. They navigate narrow paths, cross frozen streams, and skirt around steep ravines. Snowdrifts shift beneath their feet, and the weather seems to change. With every step, clouds gather, and the daylight fades faster than expected, casting long shadows across the mountains. Some hikers pause to adjust their packs or check equipment. Maps are studied again. Every detail matters here: which trail to follow, how to avoid hidden crevices, how to stay together. The mountains demand respect, and the hikers know it. As they ascend further, small anomalies appear. Strange sounds echo through the trees. The snow seems deeper than expected, and the wind carries a chill that feels almost unnatural. Footprints of unknown animals cross their path, leaving questions in their minds. The hikers share uneasy glances, but push forward. Adventure drives them onward, even as subtle hints of danger begin to whisper through the wilderness. This is the heart of the Ural Mountains. The group is isolated, surrounded by imposing peaks and endless snowfields. Every step forward brings them deeper into a landscape that is both breathtaking and forbidding, a landscape that will soon reveal the mystery and tragedy of the Dyatlov Pass. By the time the group reaches the higher slopes of the mountain, the atmosphere has changed. The wind is no longer just cold. It feels aggressive. Snow whips across the surface in sharp bursts, reducing visibility and blurring the horizon. The hikers decide to set up camp along a barren slope, rather than retreat to the forest below. It is an unusual decision. The area offers little protection from the wind, yet they carefully plant their tent into the hard-packed snow, securing it against the storm. Night approaches quickly in the mountains. Darkness falls early, swallowing the landscape in deep shadows. Inside the tent, the group settles in. They remove some of their heavy outer layers, share food, write brief notes in their journals, and try to rest. Laughter fades into tired silence. But outside, something feels different. The wind grows stronger, creating strange vibrations along the slope. Snow shifts and slides in unnatural patterns. Some later reports suggest that faint rumbling sounds may have echoed across the mountainside, distant, low, and unsettling. Inside the tent, tension slowly builds. The fabric flutters violently with each gust. The hikers, experienced and disciplined, listen carefully. Every sound matters. In a place like this, a crack in the snowpack, a distant roar, a sudden vibration beneath the ground. Then, something happens. What exactly occurred that night is still debated, but evidence later shows the tent was cut open from the inside. Not carefully unzipped, not opened normally, slashed. In freezing temperatures, with winds howling and darkness surrounding them, the 9 hikers suddenly left their shelter, some without coats, some without boots. They stepped out into the storm, and from that moment on, the Dyatlov Pass expedition would become one of the most disturbing mysteries ever recorded. Sometime during the night, something forced the hikers to make a desperate decision. The tent, their only protection against the brutal Siberian cold, was cut open from the inside, not unzipped, not carefully opened. Slashed in panic. Outside, the temperature had dropped to nearly -30°C. Winds screamed across the mountainside, carrying sharp snow that stung like needles. Darkness covered everything. And yet, all 9 hikers ran out into that freezing night. Footprints, later discovered in the snow, revealed something chilling. The group did not appear to be running wildly. The tracks suggested they moved quickly, but not chaotically. Some were barefoot. Some wore only socks. Others had partially dressed in haste. Why would experienced hikers abandon their shelter without proper clothing? The footprints led downhill, toward a forest, nearly a mile away. It was the only natural protection from the wind. The hikers seemed to be heading towards safety, or at least what they believed was safety. Investigators later reconstructed the scene. Beneath a large cedar tree at the edge of the forest, signs of a small fire were found. Broken branches, up to 15 feet high, suggested that someone had climbed the tree, possibly trying to see back toward the tent. 2 bodies were later found near that tree. They were barefoot, wearing only light under. Their skin showed signs of severe frostbite. A fire had not been enough. Between the tree and the tent, 3 more bodies were discovered. They appeared to be crawling back uphill, as if trying to return to their shelter. Their positions suggested determination or desperation. It was as if the group had split into smaller teams, each trying to survive the freezing chaos in their own way. But the most disturbing discoveries were yet to come, because 4 hikers were still missing. And when they were finally found, months later, their injuries would raise even darker questions. Months passed before the remaining 4 hikers were found. Winter slowly loosened its grip on the mountains. Snow began to melt, revealing what had been hidden beneath layers of ice. In May 1959, search teams discovered the final 4 bodies, not near the cedar tree, but deeper inside a ravine, buried under several feet of snow. What they found was far more disturbing than frostbite. Unlike the others, these hikers had severe internal injuries. 1 had a fractured skull. 2 had massive chest trauma, the kind of force usually seen in high-speed car accidents. And yet, there were no external wounds to match the damage. No signs of a struggle, no visible attacker. It was as if an invisible pressure had crushed them from the inside. Even more unsettling, one of the victims was missing her tongue. Soft tissues in the mouth and face were gone. Another had severe facial damage, but the surrounding snow showed no signs of violence. No bloodstains, no weapon, no footprints from strangers. The official conclusion would later state, a compelling natural force. But what natural force causes internal injuries without external trauma? What makes 9 experienced hikers flee into a deadly storm? And why did some attempt to return to the tent, while others hid in the ravine? The deeper investigators looked, the more the mystery grew. As news of the tragedy spread, authorities scrambled to understand what had happened at Dyatlov Pass. Local police, military units, and experienced mountaineers joined a massive search operation. The chilling reality was clear. 9 young, experienced hikers had perished under incomprehensible circumstances. Investigators examined the scene with meticulous care. Photographs were taken, sketches made, and every footprint catalogued. The tent, slashed from the inside, raised more questions than answers. What had caused the hikers to flee in the dead of night into sub-zero temperatures? Why did some run barefoot or in socks? No logical explanation seemed to fit. The first 2 bodies found near the cedar tree were examined. Signs of frostbite were evident, but no violent struggle was visible. Yet, when the remaining 4 were discovered months later in the ravine, their injuries shocked even seasoned doctors. Internal trauma without external wounds, fractured skulls, broken ribs, injuries comparable to being hit by a high-speed vehicle, and yet no sign of impact from rocks or weapons. One victim was missing her tongue. Another had severe facial trauma. How could this happen in the remote wilderness without anyone else present? Interviews began with locals, hikers who had met the group, and members of the search parties. Witness accounts were conflicting. Some recalled hearing strange whistling sounds in the distance. Others described odd lights or movements across the mountains. The weather conditions were brutal. Heavy snowfall, strong winds, and sudden temperature drops. Yet no natural disaster such as an avalanche seemed to explain the sequence of events fully. The Soviet authorities compiled a detailed report. Officially, the case was classified as an unknown, compelling natural force, but investigators themselves admitted they were baffled. The inconsistencies in injuries, the unexplained footprints, and the bizarre behavior of the hikers challenged every known explanation in mountaineering and survival science. As the world would later learn, the Dyatlov Pass incident became more than just a tragedy. It was a puzzle that defied logic, and even decades later, every new discovery, every piece of evidence, only deepened the mystery of what truly happened on that fateful night in February 1959. As the investigators struggled to explain the tragedy, theories began to circulate. Experts, mountaineers, and later curious minds from around the world proposed possibilities. Some rationale, some utterly bizarre. Could it have been an avalanche? The slope seemed gentle, and the snowpack was stable. Yet the hikers fled in panic. Could they have felt the snow shifting under unseen pressure? For, was there something more dangerous lurking in the darkness? Some speculated about military testing. The area had been used for secret weapons experiments. Unexplained radiation traces were later recorded on some clothing, sparking whispers of a failed missile or parachute mine. But evidence was scarce, and authorities denied any such activity. Psychological explanations were considered as well. Could extreme hypothermia have caused irrational behavior? The paradoxical undressing phenomenon, where victims of hypothermia remove clothing despite freezing temperatures, is documented in survival science. Could fear, disorientation, and the biting cold have driven the hikers to abandon the tent? Local legends and folklore added to the mystique. Whistling winds, spirits of the mountains, and ancient tales of the Ural wilderness painted the tragedy in a spectral light. Some believed the hikers had been pursued by a mysterious entity, forcing them to flee into the storm. Then, there were the strange details: missing tongues, internal injuries, and footprints leading back and forth in odd patterns. Could multiple forces have acted together? Natural danger, compounded by panic, or something else entirely unknown, inexplicable, terrifying? The Dyatlov Pass incident became a riddle that no single theory could fully solve. Every hypothesis explained a piece, but none captured the full picture. And perhaps that is why, decades later, the story continues to haunt historians, mountaineers, and anyone who dares to imagine what really happened in that frozen night of February 1959. For decades, the Dyatlov Pass incident remained frozen in time, buried beneath snow, secrecy, and speculation. But the mystery refused to disappear. Years later, researchers, journalists, and independent investigators began re-examining the case. Old photographs were enhanced. Archived documents were reopened. Witness testimonies were revisited with fresh eyes. In the 1990s, After the fall of the Soviet Union, previously restricted files became accessible. Some reports hinted at military activity in the region. Others confirmed traces of radiation on certain clothing items. But none of it provided a complete answer. Then came modern science. Advanced computer simulations were conducted to recreate the terrain, the snowpack, and the weather conditions of that night. Experts in avalanche dynamics studied the slope carefully. Initially, the area seemed too gentle for a major avalanche, but newer models suggested a rare type of slab avalanche, one that could have formed hours after the hikers set up camp. This theory proposed that a sudden snow shift may have partially collapsed the tent, forcing the group to escape quickly. Injuries found on the final four could have been caused by the weight of compacted snow in the ravine. In 2020, Russian authorities officially reopened the case once more. After re-examining the evidence, they concluded that a natural avalanche was the most likely explanation. But even that conclusion did not silence the doubts. Critics pointed out inconsistencies, the lack of obvious avalanche debris, the unusual internal injuries, and the strange behavior of the hikers. Some still questioned the radiation traces. Others wondered about the missing tongue and the unexplained lights reported in the sky. The more technology advanced, the more the story evolved. Yet one truth remained unchanged. 9 experienced hikers entered the Ural Mountains in February 1959, and none of them returned. Despite decades of investigation, the Dyatlov Pass continues to stand as one of history's most chilling unsolved mysteries. Imagine the night of February 1st, 1959. The wind is rising. Inside the tent, the hikers are exhausted but calm. Some are writing in journals. Others are adjusting their gear. Snow taps lightly against the fabric. Then, a sudden vibration, not loud, not explosive, but enough to change everything. Perhaps the snowpack above them begins to shift. Maybe a low rumble rolls across the slope, or maybe it's a sound they cannot immediately identify. In a confined tent, in total darkness, fear spreads quickly. Someone shouts. The fabric shakes violently. They don't waste time unzipping the entrance. They cut through the side fast, desperate, efficient. Cold air slams into them as they step outside. The temperature is deadly. The wind steals their breath instantly. They move downhill together, not running wildly, but urgently. Experienced hikers know one rule: reach the forest for shelter. But in the chaos, they are underdressed. Adrenaline overrides logic. Survival instinct takes control. At the cedar tree, they attempt to build a fire, to climb higher, trying to see the tent through the storm. The fire burns weakly against the snow. Time passes. The cold tightens its grip. Some decide to return to the tent, to retrieve boots, coats, supplies. They never make it. Others seek deeper shelter in the ravine, possibly constructing a snow den. But if snow collapses above them, the weight could explain the crushing injuries found later. Was it panic mixed with natural disaster? Was it confusion in extreme darkness and blizzard conditions? Or did something else trigger the initial fear? We may never know. But in those final moments, 9 young explorers faced something so urgent, so terrifying, that staying inside the tent felt more dangerous than stepping into the freezing storm. And that decision changed history forever. More than 6 decades have passed since that frozen night in the Ural Mountains. The snow has fallen again and again over Dyatlov Pass, covering footprints, erasing traces, silencing echoes of the past. But the mystery remains. 9 young explorers set out with courage, ambition, and trust in their skills. They were not reckless. They were experienced, careful, prepared. And yet, something happened on that mountainside that forced them to abandon safety and walk into darkness. Over the years, investigators have offered conclusions: avalanche, hypothermia, natural forces. Scientific models attempt to reconstruct the slope, the wind speed, the snow density. But beyond the data and the reports, there is something deeper that continues to haunt people. It is the human element, the image of a tent cut open in panic, footprints leading into endless snow, a small fire beneath a cedar tree. Bot is positioned as if still trying to survive. The Dyatlov Pass incident is not just a mystery of science. It is a story of fear, instinct, and the fragility of life in the face of nature's power. Perhaps the truth lies in a combination of factors: a sudden snow shift, blinding winds, confusion and darkness, desperate survival decisions. Or perhaps there are details we will never fully understand. And maybe that is why this story continues to fascinate the world. Because sometimes the most chilling mysteries are not about monsters or conspiracies. They are about ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances, making split-second decisions in the coldest night imaginable. The Ural Mountains still stands silent. The wind still moves across the slopes. And somewhere beneath the snow-covered silence of Dyatlov Pass, the unanswered questions remain.